When I was 9, my dad lost his job, and it had a devastating impact on our family, both for the immediate and the long term, and it left an imprint on me, really one that lasted to this day, and that left a mark on me as to how devastating the effects of unemployment can be, whether that was domestically or globally. So, despite the struggles, I went on to get an education, and my parents filled out a gazillion loan papers to get me to NYU. And then I graduated smack dab in the middle of a recession as a journalism major. You can imagine that didn't work out too well. So now I was faced with my own unemployment, which was incredibly triggering because I had already dealt with unemployment through the lens of a parent. And to add insult to injury, I had to leave New York City and move back home to New Jersey with my parents. So I began commuting, taking public transportation back to New York City in search of a job. So I wound up taking the wrong turn on the FDR. At that point, I was on foot, and for those of you not familiar with New York City, if you get lost on the FDR, which is the Franklin Delano Roosevelt Drive, you're just miles and miles away from anywhere. But I wound up stumbling onto this random temp agency. So they gave me some shots at some interviews, and after a grueling 4 or 5 interviews and being told I wasn't enough, I wound up getting a job in investment banking. Yes, investment banking, as a journalism major. And this job was at Merrill Lynch on the 25th floor. And that's the floor when the elevator doors open, you're met with gold bulls, and you're overtaken by the smell of these chocolate chip cookies. So little did I know that less than 10 years later, these chocolate chip cookies that, oh, by the way, it took me 6 years to figure out, they were not for me, they were for clients, would feature very predominantly in my life, and I could not have dreamt of this, but in the lives of others. So my job first was as an analyst, and then through the years I got some promotions and wound up as a vice president in international private client. And my job there was to make sure that the investments we were placing in funds were good and sound investments. So for this, I did research and marketing, and that led me to be able to travel all over the world, and it also gave me exposure to new people and new cultures, and most of all, new experiences. So one of my trips took me to Mumbai, which was then Bombay. And when I was there, I worked in a building called the World Financial Center, which paled in comparison to the World Financial Center I really worked in. So I had to cross a highway from the hotel I was staying in to get to this building. And there I had to kind of duck and dodge to get to that building. And I was also fighting with the traffic and the cows, and what happened was there, I realized the dichotomy between those who have and those who have not. And I was just so struck by the two different worlds I was living in, and I knew I had to do something different, and I know many of you are so familiar with this quote by Robert Frost, who says, "Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled, and that made all the difference." So I knew that I had to learn how to give back. So I applied again to NYU, this time to Robert F. Wagner Graduate School for Public Service. And it was there that I was just surrounded by champions for social causes. And I was also very lucky to intern at the UN for a woman who had lived in South Africa for many years, helping the country transition to a democratic, free and fair election. And I was so impressed. So I had to go. And trust me when I say nothing was going to stop me. So I asked NYU if they would transfer me to the University of Cape Town Graduate School of Business. So I arrived in Africa, and I was able to distribute radios that counted as a tool by UNICEF as humanitarian aid. And once I was there, I realized my purpose. And that purpose was to create a sustainable model for the people of South Africa, because I didn't just want to give something away, because, and you'll know this as well, if you give a man a fish, he's going to eat for a day. And if you teach a man how to fish, he's going to eat for a lifetime. So, given this understanding, I decided that I would start a company. And I would name that company the Alicia Cookie Company. And that means, Kaya means home, and Licha means new. And the idea was that I would create this company, and that company would be designed to provide people with employment. But we'll come back to that. So I worked with 80/20, a data-driven research analytics business, and I wanted to make sure that I was correct with these statistics. So they told me that there was a significant societal problem in Cape Town, in South Africa. And we looked at the numbers. And first we started with youth and unemployment. And for the age bracket of 15 to 24, 62% are unemployed. And then for the next age bracket, from 25 to 34, 41% of those people are unemployed. And then there's a bracket which is called NEET. And that means no education, no employment, and no access to job training. That's 36%. But then 80/20 went on to tell me about something staggering. And that's a group called Mothers of the Nation, which is comprised of 7 million women. On average, they're 35 years old with the US dollar income equivalent of $50 a month. But they're surrounded by households that make 8 times as much. And those women have really only 4 occupations. 95% of them, they're either sweepers or cleaners or vendors for either food or non-food or domestic helpers. So as I was saying, I decided that I needed to do something different. And what I was going to do was to start a business, and that was called the Alicia Cookie Company. So I decided that I would use baking, understanding my audience, I would use baking to solve this societal ill, right? So I understood my audience, it would be women, and I was going to use baking to solve the societal ill. So why baking to solve something so serious? Because baking is a skill that is replicable and transferable across a multitude of cultures and languages. And with that knowledge and with that understanding, I went on to start this company. And that company was named the Alicia Cookie Company. And the idea behind the company was to start something that would create skills for the unemployed or the unemployable. And I would hire women who were particularly caught up under the apartheid web. So those women were a bit older, they had no formal education, no formal training, and many of them never had a job before. So many of them we did have some trust issues, but we we made it work, right? They had had some bad experiences with some people who had come into the township before, and we were off and running. So what we did was we started very small with the business, and we started doing business primarily with people who had had something similar, like corporate social responsibility programs. And the business actually started to grow. And the women started making sustainable income for the first time in their lives. And that income started expanding into the township. You don't have to create something so large. We created something replicable and sustainable. So as we moved on through the years, then we worked with others to achieve their vision. So we worked with our first employee, Matabo, to help her realize her vision. And this is Matabo, and this is our first worker. And we're gonna circle back to Matabo a little bit later. But as I reflect on my journey with helping Matabo achieve her income, I realized that unemployment and being surrounded by unemployment was really my pilot light. And that was what helped get me here on this red dot. So if you imagine I never took that wrong turn on the FDR, I wouldn't be standing here today. So I'd like to show you, if I may, I'd like to give you a few suggestions on how you can go about your journey of helping somebody achieve their societal goals, or how you can start your journey to solve a societal ill. So, 1, thoughts become things. I believe that if you can vision it, it can become a reality. And 2, you must be obsessed with solving for the X that is your societal ill. I think this one is probably one of the most poignant and important. So if you want to do something, do the most amount of good by doing the least amount of harm. So don't make assumptions. Work within your environment. Respect the people who are there daily, and remember that you are a guest. And lastly, project plan, project plan, project plan. If there is no project plan, there is no venture. So we had to plan for everything from how do you get raw ingredients into a township due to safety? How do you take your finished product out of the township due to safety? What does the marketing and packaging look like to how do we plan for proper financing? But with a little bit of persistence, your outcome can look like this. So this is Matabo, who you saw her in a slide before, and that's 20 years of sustainable income. And when we first met, after we resolved the trust issue, she told me that she wanted a home with running hot and cold water, furniture, and a TV. So that is her vision achieved. So if you want to have your vision achieved, you have to have a little bit of patience and persistence. And when I reflect back on my journey, as I said earlier, I think if any of these things had not happened to me, I wouldn't be standing here. So remember, when you're in South Africa, I do give some good tours. If you come across a Alicia cookie, remember, you're not just eating a cookie that tastes good, you're eating one that has helped create sustainable and replicable employment for the men and women of South Africa. So with that said, thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the rest of the conference.